Welcome to Telling the Truth 2020 at the New York State Writers Institute at the University at Albany, State University of New York. I'm Mark Koplik, Assistant Director. A virtual symposium on politics, journalism, tribalism, polarization, and the future of democracy. Telling the Truth 2020 brings you conversations with major thinkers and public figures from across the political spectrum. We're excited to be here today with two recent and very significant Trump administration insiders. Casey Mulligan, professor of economics at the University of Chicago, served as chief economist on President Donald Trump's Council of Economic Advisors. His new book is You're Hired: Untold Successes and Failures of a Populist President, which provides a front row seat for anyone interested in policy and politics inside the Trump White House. You can purchase You're Hired at a local indie bookseller from a link here on this screen. Joseph Grogan served as director of the United States Domestic Policy Council and assistant to President Donald Trump. He was the president's lead advisor on a variety of domestic policy issues, including healthcare, regulation, and education. Most importantly, he's a UAlbany alum who graduated with a BA in English in 1994. One of his teachers here at SUNY was our late friend and guiding light, Tom Smith, who was truly a co-founder of the Writers Institute together with William Kennedy. Joe and Casey, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for letting me be here.
It's a pleasure.
This is a question for both of you, and it's addressed at length in Casey's book. The White House is often depicted as a place of perpetual chaos. The book presents it more as a productive laboratory of ideas and outside the box thinking. Can you both talk about that?
Sure, Casey, why don't you go first?
Well, chaos is, I think the definition of chaos is the opposite of predictability. And while I was there, it was extremely predictable. I came in with a plan 12 months ahead. I figured we wouldn't stick to it like anything. And no matter where I've been in life, it's hard to predict 12 months ahead. But we followed the plan, and we were ahead on many issues, ranging from socialism to falling prescription drug prices. Even the pandemic, we worked on a pandemic analysis, economic analysis of pandemics, which we released in September. And I can't say we saw a pandemic coming, but we knew that this was a major policy area that one of these days the president would be interested in that. And it turns out this year.
Mm-hmm.
Joe?
Yeah, I think too, Casey, I think your pandemic report, I think that was part of the intellectual foundation to the modernizing pandemic flu vaccine production executive order that we did along with Tony Fauci and NIH to try and move to a modern platform for developing pan flu vaccines and be able to make them much more quickly. But from my own experience, I've spent time in the private sector working for companies as well. I think some people view President Trump's style because it's unorthodox and unlike the traditional politician as chaos or completely disordered. And that's the opposite of my experience working with hard-charging, visionary private sector leaders. I worked at a place called Gilead Sciences where the CEO, John Martin, had revolutionized HIV treatment with a molecule called tenofovir, had revolutionized hepatitis C treatment with a molecule called sofosbuvir, which ultimately became Sovaldi. That environment and Amgen as well, and some of the people I've worked with in consulting, entrepreneurial, energetic, creative people like that, they don't behave the way a normal politician does with, this is the poll that tells me to do X, and we've got to have another meeting on this. The president was very energetic with a defined viewpoint and pointing fingers at people saying, do this, why isn't this done yet? And from my experience, that was no different than the private sector people that I had worked with who made a real impact and weren't just there to punch a ticket or collect, the next tranche of stock options.
What was it, a fun work environment at times? Do you have any anecdotes about office culture that we might not expect?
Well, from my own experience, I mean, it was very, it was a lot of fun. I mean, there were long days, there were stressful days. I didn't show up, to get free M&Ms and photo ops. I was working really hard. Casey was as well. There were just an incredible collection of talent working in the White House during much of my time there. People come, people go. Casey left before I did, and he was a real loss. But I did have a lot of fun. There are always rivalries. There are always people who get on your nerves. There are policy fights that are real and substantive. I honestly didn't take that stuff personally, but some of the fights are frustrating that you're in them at all. But for the most part, it was a fantastic experience. I mean, unquestionably, and the working with the people around the president was the highlight.
Casey?
Yeah, I agree. It was very fun. I'm from Chicago. I'm in Chicago at the moment. I got an apartment there, got myself an alarm clock. I never used it, never once set the alarm or used it. I was so excited to go work with Joe and my other colleagues. I always woke up by myself. And it was a sad day to leave. I'm an academic. We're on an academic year. When my leave of absence was done, I needed to go back. I mean, that's life. We always wish the leaves of absences could go on, and that's really democracy. I mean, the White House is a temporary residence for everybody. So it was very sad to go, but that's life, and it ought to be that way.
The president's tweeting habit is often depicted as the ravings of a madman in his pajamas. Casey, you present a very different view of that. Can you tell us about it?
Well, I think to understand just about everything that goes on there, I think you got to understand the populism point of view, which is the president got elected from the heartland, the flyover country, whatever you want to call it. He did not get elected by the ruling folk, the bureaucrats, whatever you want to call them. I mean, there's just hard evidence on that fact. And if you're propelling yourself from the outside, you need some way around the traditional institutions that were against him. And the Twitter is part of that. The Twitter, people have to sign into it. I mean, you got to get people signed up. So it's got to be entertaining. It's got to be newsworthy. So that's reason number one. And then I think kind of his business training, he likes to try ideas. So in business these days, they call it fast failure. He throws stuff out there and to see, kind of a trial balloon, see how it goes. And it's a 70 million person focus group in a sense. And when you understand it from that perspective, you get a very different view. And Joe can tell you, he's not sitting there tapping on his phone. That I actually never saw in the Oval Office any electronic device except for Dan's laptop computer, and he was really the Twitter man, not the president. Now the president has plenty of input to that. Although there were plenty of tweets that would go through, I don't know, dozens of people in the Eisenhower building before it went out. So the bathrobe and sitting around tapping in the phone is not too accurate.
Yeah, I think too, the other way to think about this too are the rallies. I mean, he views the rallies as a focus group as well. And he's polling the people in the rallies, trying out lines, trying out the ideas and having a conversation. And he gets, to Casey's point, he's testing this stuff. He's testing words and phrases, and he's testing real ideas. There were plenty of times when I was in the Oval Office, he would refer back to how a line or a portion of a speech or a riff that he was on in a rally had gone over, and then say, yeah, I'm not going near that idea again. I think that was something we should stay away from. And the same thing with Twitter. He really does view it as a way to gauge the public's interest. I had lunch in the executive dining room with a senior Democratic pollster who had advised a previous Democratic president, who may or may not have been Bill Clinton. And that pollster said to me that he met with the head of the Domestic Policy Council once a week the entire time that he worked in the White House, and met on a regular basis with the president. That never happened to me. I mean, I met with a couple pollsters who would come in on their own to say, this is what we're learning. And it was kind of interesting, but there was no routine polling apparatus in the White House and no feedback from professional pollsters the entire time I was there. It was really around, the president trying out on Twitter and the rallies. And I would say this too, when the rallies began to go away, I think it did hurt the president. I think it hurt him as far as his touch with people. I think it hurt him as far as his energy level. And I don't think it's good, frankly, to be in the White House complex without access to the people on a regular basis. I don't think that's good for anybody. So I do think that it was good for him and important for him to get back to doing rallies.
No, there's no doubt that the pandemic put him in the Washington bubble. It was no good. It's worse for him than for any other president, because like I said, that's not the basis of his support. And that's not why he was hired, just so to speak. He was hired by people outside the bubble. And, he's got a memory. He can remember what it used to be like to talk to people in Pennsylvania, but there's nothing like being there. And it's been very refreshing that he's out there again.
So the president is something of a caricature to many of us, and you actually know this guy, both of you, and you've worked with him directly. What would you like us to know about him?
Well, I think two things. He's really smart. I mean, he's smart in ways that I don't even he has a skill set that I don't understand where it comes from. Shortly after I joined, I stopped questioning tweets or some of his messaging, because, there were certain things where I would immediately say, was that smart? And it got to be humiliating because it would work out in his favor. I mean, he was always 3 steps ahead on a whole host of knowledge bases that I don't have any understanding of. It's like he's doing higher math and I'm screwing around with basic addition on some things. And then on a personal level, he can be really one of the most kind human beings on a one-on-one basis. The caricature is that he's mean, and I know he reacts to public criticism in a way, but in his personal interactions to people who are having a difficult time or who are struggling, be they widows. I had a number of events with him without cameras, with people with disabilities, people who had a tough break in life. He could be incredibly kind and generous. And at his club, you show up, I was fortunate to go to Mar-a-Lago. The staff loves him. They don't love him because he's president. They loved him when he was running it because he was generous to them and he treats them well. And he loves the average person, to Casey's point. He loves people with practical knowledge and practical experience far more than a pundit on TV, for instance.
Casey?
Yeah, he has this skill. In addition to being, I compare him to other CEOs that I've met, presidents of major universities, any of those types of people who've made it to that level. You don't have to be with them long to realize they have some special talents. And you notice that with the president, but the president also has this additional skill that I had never seen before, and maybe we'll never see again, in managing social networks. That's the only way I have to express it. He can say a few words. He had nicknames in the White House, not mean ones, but the way he could just say a few words and people would laugh. And also dozens of us know exactly where we all were. I remember one meeting that we went too, and he decided against Joe and I, and some others were pushing for something, and he decided against us. So we thought. Later we learned there was a bigger plan, as Joe said. But he told us, he looked at us, he says, "Hey, young geniuses, put your heads down and get this done." And then it was a way to say that he appreciated our talents, that we were the geeky number guys, but he also appreciated, he was siding with an older member of the administration who wasn't young, maybe not a genius either, but and then that's the type of thing he did. Or he told Brian, Brian, you're stronger than Larry Kudlow. And that was kind of sending the message that, Larry, you should be at this meeting, not Brian. And he does that, on a much more massive scale, and with the social media and all his rallies, like or dislike his Hunter Biden stuff. It's a double whammy. One move, and he's got obviously pressure on his opponent, but also pressure on the media and on big tech. So, like I said, double whammy is actually a triple whammy, and he has that talent with kind of one swing of the bat. He can hit the ball 3 times.
So my kids sometimes make fun of me for being an English major. Joe, you were an English major at Albany. Was that a good choice? And do you encourage others to consider that path?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a business major at Boston College for 2 years and was unhappy. And nothing against Boston College or business, but I was able to transfer to SUNY Albany and major in English, minor in journalism. And for me, especially going into, ultimately I got a law degree too, but only practiced for a year. I've spent time in corporate America. I've spent time in government. And I spent a lot of time on policy processes and trying to find consensus. It may sound corny, but the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, to understand another person's point of view that comes from not just connecting with an author or a narrator and the characters, but people in a classroom like at SUNY, which was so diverse, and not just racially diverse, socioeconomically diverse, age diverse, women who had been homemakers going back to get a college degree, people who had dropped out of college before and gone back. It was just such a diverse environment, and being able to be around people like that who wanted to be at college and were working hard. I think it was a great experience for me. I think about Tom Smith just about every day. I'm not lying about that. I remember he had a great line in there in talking about one of the books we were going over, and he said, "No one's ever written the truth about sex because no one knows the truth about sex." And I spent a big chunk of my life working on HIV policy, first in the Bush administration, running the President's Advisory Council on HIV and AIDS, and then at Gilead, where we had 80% of the market for HIV treatment and prevention drugs. And you can't work in that environment if you have preconceived notions about how humans should interact sexually and behave, and social networks and all these things. And I just go back to the education I had at SUNY on a regular basis, and every day I rely upon it.
So Casey, as an economist and an academic, how do you feel about the value of a traditional, well-rounded liberal arts education?
Well, I'm a big fan of it. You're learning how to learn. The world's changing. It's not going to stop changing. So you need to learn how to learn. If we were to teach you the state of the art when you're 21, it's not going to be the state of the art anymore. So the vocational training has its limits. I'll put it that way. And I know in my own career, I've been always learning new things, teaching myself new things, learn to read the textbook by myself. These are, I found to be valuable skills in a world where things change. And, even by the time I was in my 30s, there were things I wanted to learn, and I would have had no idea that I should have taken that class when I was 21, because it wasn't a fashionable class back then. and vice versa. Some of the classes that were fashionable when I was in college, like taking Japanese, that's not a big deal now. Taking Chinese might be the sort of thing. So just having the skills to learn it's got a lot of value.
In this current edition of our Telling the Truth Symposium, we've been talking a lot about political tribes and extreme polarization in this country. Is it important for folks to reach out across political divides and to come together in some kind of common purpose?
Absolutely. I mean, that's hopefully what we're all in business for. It's certainly why I do what I do and trying to stay in the public arena to get ideas out there. And yeah, argue when necessary, but be respectful and find consensus. I've always found, frankly, I mean, I live in Washington, D.C. I'm part of the 4% that didn't vote for Hillary Clinton in the last election. I would have no friends and have nothing to do if I only hung out with Republicans, and my kids would be very lonely as well. I've found that when you cut beyond the labels and people's superficial understanding of issues, there is a tremendous amount of common ground out there. It is a complication now more than ever with some of the social media stuff and the labeling and the instant temperature rising that occurs. But I've found that you can really, if you take the time to talk to people, you can find common ground. And frankly, it's the only way to move forward. I don't expect everybody to agree with me every time on everything, but we agree on far more, I hope, than we disagree on. And as Americans, that's where we need to be focused. What can we agree on and how can we move forward together?
Casey, a lot of common ground?
You know, this is kind of a new topic to me. I mean, my profession being academic economics was always quite a mixed, maybe even 50-50 if you measure it by political party. Now, campuses generally weren't that way, but econ departments were. So I kind of took that for granted, but it's shifted very much in the last handful of years. So I'm still adapting to a polarized situation or the situation of being in a minority. It's not something I would have imagined, but now to be a Trump alumnus is a pretty small group, or just to be somebody in the econ department who doesn't hate our president is a pretty small group, but I'm still kind of adjusting to that.
So we had a conversation with Amy Chua, author of Political Tribes, and she suggests that we all try to connect with each other, our fellow students, our neighbors, on the level, at least at first, on the level of talking about sports and pets and pizza. And once that's successful, we can start to talk about more substantive issues. What do you think about that kind of project?
I mean, that's been my approach, just dealing with running into, acquainted with non-academics. I mean, I have those kind of more popular culture sort of things. I'm a huge Chicago Bears fan. Don't tell me what happened yesterday, though. I didn't see it yet. But you know, those sort of things I think are very effective.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it's kind of bizarre. I don't remember a period where we needed to align ourselves politically as the first thing you get to know somebody, right? It's sort of bizarre. I mean, let's get to know each other as human beings, and then we can get to politics. And all these institutions, I mean, there's been the last few decades of scholarly work about societal institutions that maybe we've become untethered to, and we're retreating into our individual silos, you know, bowling alone and the retreat from our houses of worship. I think we all need to get out there more, stand on the sidelines when our kids are playing sports, to Casey's point, watch the Bears, on Sunday and get to know each other as people anymore again, and get over this constant political warfare, because it's not healthy. And like I said, there is a lot of common ground out there, even on politics, but you're not going to get to it if you don't understand who you're talking to as a person.
What advice do you have for young conservatives or libertarians or Republicans on our campus or any college campus?
I mentioned I'm still kind of navigating that territory, but when I joined the administration, I had a strategy for that, and that was, I wanted to hit a higher standard. That the work that I did, that my counterpart do it better than my counterpart in Obama or Bush or Ronald Reagan. That's what we were aiming for. I think we hit it, but history will judge. This is just a fact that that's what it's like to be in the minority. You want to stand out, you need to hit a higher note than the average is.
And Joe?
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I think Casey's right. You have to work hard and be prepared. You have to be respectful of your peers, including when you think they're saying things that are glib or haven't been thought through. It doesn't serve you well as a student to be judgmental, and it's ruinous for a conservative or Republican to be in a classroom conversation or be in a dorm room and come across as arrogant. And you just have to work on your patience on this, do your homework, work hard, and many times bite your tongue. You don't need to fight every single point. You didn't go there to change the world. You don't need to hide your viewpoint, your viewpoints necessarily, and you don't need to be somebody you're not. But you also don't need to be constantly out swinging your fists all the time and getting involved in every classroom conversation. I think the best thing you can do to contribute to the country is to do well in school and educate yourself. And to Casey's point, strive for a higher standard.
And if you guys don't mind my asking, what was that? I mean, what was your experience? I mean, I'm not sure if you came to your conservative views later in life or as a student, but what was your experience as a student on college campus? Was it as an embattled young conservative or not?
Yeah, that was my.
Oh, sorry, Casey, go ahead. No, I'm intrigued by what you're going to say.
That was my experience. I was on a campus, even in economics, it was this pretty small group, and we had a little niche of guys. There were 3 or 4 of us. We were in the corner, and at the end of the day, we would come together and kind of commiserate what we dealt with during the day. And it gave us energy to go back. We had one faculty member who supported us, so we were in the corner kind of in his office. And that really helped a lot, having the one faculty member. It was a big faculty, but there was one who thought like we did, and that really made it fun.
Yeah, I mean, I was definitely in the minority at University at Albany, but that isn't to say there weren't kids who were conservative or Republican, and there were a lot of people who would say things after class or the next day or a week later and say they'd see me getting coffee or something and say, hey, you made this comment or that discussion you were in, I really appreciated it. So there were more people, and it frankly, it was frequently non-stereotypical, the people that would come up to you. I developed a lot of friendships, and that was, again, back to the diversity. I've developed a lot of friendships with people that I wouldn't have met or hung out with necessarily had I not been at SUNY Albany. I remember there was a kid who we sat next to in class, great guy, saw the world, came to understand we saw the world in much the same way in one of these English classes. And I asked him, I'd say, hey, couple of us are going out to get a beer. Do you want to come? And he said no. And another time he was asked, finally admitted he was a recovering heroin addict. And he had really struggled and he had to drop out of college, and he was back and he was in recovery. And this was his chance to change his life. And there were other people, you know, a variety of different racial backgrounds who would come up to me about a various subjects. So there was a lot of courtesy among the community as well. So I just found it to be such a rich experience when I was there in the mid 90s.
There's a big emphasis here at the university on evaluating the quality of sources of information for authority, objectivity. What sources of information would you recommend to college students?
I'm not a big fan of appeal to authority, period. Engage the ideas. You know, I'm speaking to the students. You guys are smart. You don't need somebody to hand it to you. Engage the ideas yourself, and you'll find you're doing that at just the level that the authoritative folks, so to speak, are.
Yeah, Joe?
Yeah, I think, Casey, if I could express it a little differently from my perspective, it's really digging down and doing your own thinking about the various issues. I mean, and remember, any data set, you can cherry pick data. So just saying, I've got the data from X, you've got to look at multiple data sets. You've got to look at who's pushing out the data. And you have to work at it. I mean, I hate to say it. I remember at one point when I started in Washington, DC, and I was a journalism minor at SUNY, I read 5 newspapers a day, and I'd lay them out, and seeing how the Journal covered a story from the New York Times, covered a story from the Washington Times or the New York Times, and then the LA Times would be in there, or I'd throw another one. You, in very quickly, I almost got like a master's or a PhD in journalism, bias, and information stuff. And you start to develop an ability to spot BS and spot, this story doesn't sound right. I bet you this unravels. And that isn't because I'm a genius or anything. It's just because I laid 5 newspapers out in front of me every day for an extended period of time. And I think, I hate to say it, young people need to do that. They need to spend the time reading different points of view, not going to the same sources over and over again, and engaging intellectual rivals, opponents with respect, and saying, reading books, if you're conservative, by liberals, watching PBS shows that are produced by liberals, and vice versa. You have to acquaint yourself with a lot of different views and get the touch. And I don't know that you can figure that out at 18 or 20 years old. It just takes a little bit of time, and it takes hard work.
One last question, Joe, I can't help but ask, any fun anecdotes from your time here at Albany?
Oh, it was fun. You know, there were, but I got to be honest with you, the most fun, when I look back on that time, and this is going to make me sound like a dork, because was in the classroom. I mean, it wasn't just Tom Smith. It was guys like Jeffrey Berman, who was there for many years, Mark Nepo. I think he was head of the Writers Institute at one point. There were just a bunch of good teachers. There were good people. There were a lot of laughter in classes, and it was just a great place to go to school. And I was fortunate to go there last year for a visit briefly and see how the campus had been updated. And it really, really made me happy to see how well it was doing.
Casey's book is Your Hired Untold Successes and Failures of a Populist President. It's a revelatory look at politics and policy making inside the Trump White House. We recommend it to readers of all political backgrounds, and it's available for purchase via a link on this screen. Casey Mulligan and Joe Grogan, thanks so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
It has been fun.